Welcome to Start Dakota, a show by Startup Sioux Falls where we dispel misconceptions about starting a business, uncover unique challenges faced by founders, highlight today's problem solvers, and build a stronger startup community for tomorrow. This project is powered by the SBA. Now, here's your host, Brienne Maner.
Hello and welcome to our show. I'm Brienne Maner, Executive Director of Startup Sioux Falls. Our organization exists to help make starting a business easier. Today, we are very fortunate to have the newly appointed CEO of CO.STARTERS, an accelerator platform that we have been utilizing for the last year and a half. With us today, his name is Jose Alfaro. It's nice to see you, Jose.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. To keep it short, I am a husband. I have 2 kids. We live in Fort Worth, Texas. Our headquarters for CO.STARTERS is in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And a little bit about my background. I started in the hospitality industry, worked my way up, doing more change management and task management for hotel owners and different hotel brands. And I moved to Chattanooga, and that's where I got to meet the CO.STARTERS team, and I loved what they were doing. So I was like, how can I just let me do something? So I started actually doing operations and sales for them, and then got promoted to COO. And then just in the last 3 months, we as a team decided that it was time to make some changes. And the founder, Enoch Elwell, says like, hey, you're the right person to take the reins. And so here I am trying to help grow this amazing work that this team has just done. So
Behind every great founder is a supporting and brilliant spouse, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit more about the why behind CO.STARTERS? What were the challenges that you were seeing that kind of propelled this idea to come about, and how it's grown?
Yeah. So, actually, I want to start answering that question with entrepreneurship for a lot of people is lonely. They have this idea and they start it, but usually they go on Google or they talk to their mom or any other family members, and they just don't really know how to navigate the resources, right? And I'm talking specifically about creatives and dreamers and doers and makers who know how to do things but don't know business.
Right.
And so that's where the passion came out of it, where Enoch started a guitar business, kind of went through the same thing. I started my first business, felt the same stuff. Rebecca, who helped build our programs, same. I mean, we have this story where we were just very lonely. And so CO.STARTERS actually was just an initiative to support Chattanooga, the people in Chattanooga who were creatives, and we were trying to change their mindset about business and really changing the culture. And so Chattanooga invested a lot of money to not only bring in more businesses and not only invest in their gig economy, but also invest in the culture of the city. And so through that, we worked with a lot of creatives, a lot of artists. The funny thing is that artists don't consider themselves entrepreneurs, especially not back in 2008. And we just had to find a way to communicate with them, and we had a burning passion that we believe that these people can make a change in their community if they just had the tools, right? And like if they're having this side hustle and they're working their full-time job and they have to do the services at home, they have no time to really impact the community. And so we were like, okay, how do we change that? And so CO.STARTERS built programs and frameworks to help these individuals understand entrepreneurship in a different way, but also we redefined what entrepreneurship is. And so we call our entrepreneurs starters, because you work just to start anything, right? If you start a project, start a nonprofit, you start a business, a side hustle, whatever it is, that is creating impact in the community. In the traditional economic development, they may say, well, that's not a business. Well, yes, it is, right? If a solopreneur is a web designer and is making $100,000 a year, why is that not an entrepreneur? Because that web designer is building the economy. He's working at coffee shops. He's helping a coffee shop thrive. Well, now that coffee shop employs people and they're making money and they're going to spend their money at a brewery. Well, now you need another brewery, and like the economy grows, right? But if we don't support them, then we are stagnant to allowing just corporate jobs to come in and just say, okay, we're going to provide 300 jobs. Here's the thing though. I mean, we've heard it. They come in, they get a better deal 3 years down the road, and they leave. And those 200 jobs, those people are out of a job. So we have to find more sustainable ways to support them. So that's why we focus specifically on these creative entrepreneurs, to give them the resources that high tech, high growth startups have, and we've simplified the process. So,
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's so, everything that you're saying is resonating with me, because as an organization, we have completely transformed how we talk about entrepreneurship in this community, because there were so many small businesses and creatives that felt like they didn't have a place in the ecosystem. So to pivot from entrepreneurship, which is a terrible word and it's hard to spell and say, to call them founders or starters, and start talking about that inclusivity of industry has been transformational for this city. So to hear that you guys have been talking about that and beating that drum for almost 10 years is incredibly validating to this community. So thank you. And thank you for unlocking that for us.
No, I mean, and that's what it was, right? So like our mission was never to go and take over the nation or the world.
Right.
Our goal was just at Chattanooga. What happened was Memphis came to us, Detroit, Michigan, Lakeland, Florida, Denver, Colorado were like, hey, you're doing some cool stuff. What are you doing? And we're like, hey, I think we have something here that we can take out there. And that's how Co-Starters grew out, because people wanted to experience that, right? And everybody says, I want to be the next Austin. Well, Austin was very strategic in the way that they built their culture through that. It wasn't just like, all right, high-tech growth jobs in the university, here you go, and then we'll build some side businesses. No, it was very intentional in building that, just like you guys are doing here.
And leaning into their quirks, like we should do. Like what's that thing that Sioux Falls has that no one else has? And it starts with the people, right?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, but that should be any ecosystem, right? Every community has something that is specific to them, right? Whether it may be energy or agriculture or technology. Every community has something. Let's invest in that. Let's put that. But also, what is known as their culture? Like, what are the people fond of, and what do they want? Like, Chattanooga is a very they love drinking beer, right? For downtown that has like 150,000 people, I think there's like 10 breweries.
Same here.
But that's the culture, right? It's not the beer itself. Like, that's the means. It's the community of people coming together. That's what's beautiful.
The experience.
Yeah, experience. Yep. Yes.
So to kind of expound upon that, we have, now that we have this kind of critical mass forming and more people coming to us wanting resources, it was very apparent to us that we were ill-equipped to help support those underserved communities that had some barrier to entry, whether it was language, miles between us, just not a strong, solid foundation of a relationship. And so, as part of this process, we applied for an SBA Community Navigators grant, which awarded us $1 million over the next 2 years to help support underserved communities across our state. So we are about to embark on a journey where we're going to be supporting a Native American community through Thunder Valley CDC in Pine Ridge. We're going to be supporting rural communities. We're going to be supporting new Americans and immigrants, as well as women, veterans. What experience have you had, and what successes have you had modifying the program? You've got this curriculum in place, but clearly it needs to be modified to meet the needs of certain communities, whether they have that language barrier. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Anytime I hear stories like that, it just brings joy to my heart, because there's not a lot of investment in this type of work.
Yeah.
So, but it's starting to get there, right? So just congrats. That's amazing. But to answer your question, I always say this, like, people are like, what's the silver bullet, like, right? And I'm like, there isn't one, because each community is different. And I don't mean community by city. I mean, each community in that city is different. So a lot of times what we see is communities like, hey, we have this program, come to us. But that doesn't build trust, right? They want to know, why do you care? Why do you want to help me, right? and I'm not trying to be political here, but there is this stigma of white savior coming into my society. And whether right or wrong, that's not the argument of the place here. It's how they feel, right? And then there's no right or wrong. That's just a feeling. And so if that feeling is there, you're telling them that what they have is not good enough and they need to come to you. So the first thing is adapting the way you engage programming to them, right? So maybe they can't meet on the afternoon on a Thursday from 6 to 9. Can you do it on a Saturday? I know it's an inconvenience to us as an organization, but that's what we're trying to serve, right? Right? You got to meet them where they're at. Does the program need to be extended out instead of being 10 weeks as a pre-accelerator to 20 weeks? Because language and knowledge, right? Do we spend more time finding leaders in the community that we can partner them and do one-on-one mentorship? Like, what are the challenges that they're facing and adapting it through there? So, but it's not changing the content, it's changing the distribution to meet their needs. And a lot of that happens first is by meeting them where they're at, asking them questions, and really wanting to learn more about them, not manipulating the conversation to say, will you do what I want you to do?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. Absolutely.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure to never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Now, back to the show.
Absolutely. Again, everything you're saying is resonating. The white savior thing, it's a real challenge where I can't just come in hot to a community that I have no relationship with, which is the beauty behind this grant. I guess like a more specific question for you. I know you've had incredible, you were getting emotional this morning at our 1 Million Cups event, talking about all of the different people that you've helped. Do you have like a story top of mind that you can share, a success story with perhaps, you know, an underserved community that thrived through this process?
Yeah, I have two. One that I specifically went through, and one that we're going through right now.
Yep.
They're very different stories, but I think will resonate. So one is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, with the Latino community, right? So there's a big Guatemalan immigrant population there. And there was this idea, there was this grant. It's like, hey, let's serve them, right? But everything was downtown. And that was my mistake. I learned that, right? And they don't trust me. Like, even though I look like them, they don't trust me because I don't speak like them. I don't look like, I don't act the way their culture's different, right? I've grown up in this country, so I assimilated to this culture. So one of the things, so then we did another program and we're like, all right, we're going to do it in your community. That didn't work either. So I was like, I had to step back and I really thought through this with a few friends of mine. And I have a really good friend who runs a soccer complex in that community. And he's like, what do you think these people have in common? And I said, I don't know. He's like, what do you have in common with them? And I was like, I love soccer. I love the sport. And when he asked that question, I said, that's it. Trust is about commonalities. Like, what do we have in common? Because we can talk about what makes us different, but what do we have in common? And so when we would go play sports, it was the only place that I felt accepted by them, but there was the other place where they felt that they didn't have to fight for acceptance. It was a place that it was even keel. So I told everybody, let's just go to the soccer fields and just make connections. Let's just meet them. And so everybody started doing that. And that was the hangout place. Instead of a coffee shop, it was the complex. And I just started talking. And then the person who runs the complex, he's like, hey, people have ideas for businesses. So he started making one-on-one connections. And we started doing that. Now that I had enough of a database where people are like, they know what I'm doing. They trust me. They like me. They're like, okay, what do you have to offer? So we then ran another program and we had we had 20 people in that program and all 20 of them graduated and all 20 of them got something out of it they knew what to do next, the next steps for their programming. So I would say that's the story on that one. And what I learned is it's not just going to their community, but it's where is the place that they feel safe, that you can make that connection.
Absolutely.
Because that's where they're going to know that you care. So that's one story. That's like immigrant Latinos, English barriers, all that stuff. But then you go to a underserved community, African American community, where in Dallas, Fort Worth. So in Dallas, there's a lot of investment downtown and north. And South Dallas has no investment. It's been desolated. Like there's it's an African American population, and there's no investment, and it's so sad. And it took a church to say, we're going to meet you where you're at. What do you need? They bought this high school and said, we're going to make it for the community. You know, we're going to build a grocery store because you don't have a grocery store. So it's not like, hey, we're going to help you start businesses. It's what do you need? And as we were talking, and they were like, hey, you know what's really going to help us? We need help with starting businesses, because they believe that starting a business gives them the freedom to thrive, right? And so they just started meeting them, and they started having meetups, and they're like, hey, they just asked the questions like, what will I do to offend you that we should be cautious about? And they said, stop trying to be so cautious, just give us the information. But don't give it to us as saying, this is your answers. Help us understand it. Help us learn. And they're like, well, we have this program that is a facilitation model where we facilitate a process, but you have to do the work. They're like, that's all we want.
Mm-hmm.
We just want knowledge. We want resources.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, oh, like what more resources? Money. Okay, like what do you mean by money? Like investment, loans. So they went out and they're like, hey, we need $30,000. And they got $30,000 for a pitch competition, right? So like, it's just having those honest conversations. But what I loved about this church is that they didn't go with any assumptions. Mm-hmm. They know that there are issues, but they didn't go with the assumptions. They asked, but they were vulnerable enough to hear the feedback and to support them. And now they're running their cohort. They have 15 people. Each person has a mentor. Mm-hmm. Each person not only has a business mentor, they have a financial mentor as well. Awesome. And so that's what they need. Yep. And now the rest of the community is like, they're signing up for the next one. Yep. And so again, that's what I'm saying. It's very different, but just getting them to know them.
Listening too,
right?
Yeah.
And this is their first cohort. With the Spanish one too, we had a cohort where we did the session, and then we had a working session for an hour and a half for them to work on it, right? So that's how they adapted. This church, what they're doing is they're giving the mentor a 3-hour block here and a 3-hour block here to work specifically on their stuff. So, because there's one person there that doesn't know how to read, yeah, but they can start a business.
Exactly.
That
leads me to my next question, which is about the outcomes that were either expected to, the metrics that we talked about earlier today, where, we can put together metrics that say so many businesses graduated out of this program, but what really does constitute success in a program like this? We've tempered our expectations as far as what we're doing with these communities that we've never worked with before, to say not all of them are going to start a business, not all of them are going to be successful. Some of them might realize this isn't for me, and that's fine. How do we measure that success?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and I think it's for a deeper discussion, right? Because right now, like, success in the economic development realm and funding is jobs. Yeah. But again, right, like if you look at our education system, it's antiquated. Our education system is built to create jobs that are for the industrial age, that we're no longer really living in the industrial age. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of theories out there of what metrics should look like. So, but here's what I will say. There's two things that I want to make super clear, and I want people to really hear. Bringing in a big job creator into a city is not a bad thing. It actually can help. That's how Chattanooga got to start.
Absolutely.
But it can't be the only thing and neglect your entire talent in your backyard. And I always tell people this, and I tell economic developers this, I tell mayors this. What would it look like if you took some of that funding and invested it over 5 years and supported 50 businesses over those 5 years? So 10 businesses a year. You had 50 businesses that may, like on average, hire 2 to 3 people, either internally or as contractors, right? So now you have 150 jobs. And the reality of the truth is that with our program, we have a 70% success rate after 3 years. So like 30 of those businesses are going to still be in business, and they're going to employ 3 people. That's 90 jobs that are sustainable, that are local, that the money is being reinvested in that city. But if you only focus on the other one, there's no guarantee that that corporation wants to stay there. because if they get a better deal across the bridge or across the highway, across the state lines, they're gonna go because they care. They're not from here.
Right.
So that's the first one. The metrics that we look at is more of how do we build success for the entrepreneur.
Hey, this is Jeff Hayward, Program Manager at Startup Sioux Falls. Welcome to the Co.STARTERS Challenge, a recurring segment where we'll provide some tips for launching and growing your startup, as well as an action you can take that will support your business and build community. We call it fieldwork. Today, we want to introduce you to the Co.STARTERS Business Model Canvas. Think of it as a visual map of a business model. The canvas walks you through critical aspects of your business and helps you explain it to others. You can download the canvas for free at costarters.co/canvas. The link is provided in today's show notes. The canvas is a simple tool to work through every aspect of your business in order to be successful long term. Here are the 11 building blocks of the canvas, which you'll need to define. Number 1, your customer. Who do you serve? What are their problems, their needs, their desires? Number 2 is the problem. What is the problem your customer has? This is what your business is wanting to solve. Number 3, the alternatives. How is your customer currently solving the problem? Are there alternative solutions? What's your competition? Number 4, your solution. This is your product or service. What do you offer your customer? What do they get? Number 5 is the benefit. Why would your customer want to buy your product or service? How do you solve the problem your customer has? Number 6 is your advantage. What gives you the edge over the alternatives? And why are you the best person to do this? Number 7 is your message. What is your story? How does your customer hear it? Number 8 is your distribution. You've got a product or service you're selling. Now, how does it get to your customer? Number 9, your revenue. Now we're getting to the fun stuff. How do you make money from your customer? Number 10, your startup needs. What are your one-time needs to get started? Is it money, people, technology? And finally, number 11 is your costs. This is similar to your startup costs, but these are the ongoing needs essential to keep you going. As you can tell, there's a lot to think about when it comes to starting and running a successful business. But with the canvas as your guide, you'll be prepared for the challenges and successes that await you. So here's your fieldwork for today. Download the free Canvas tool, link is in the show notes, and try filling it out with your next business idea. And if you're already in business, try filling it out as well. We bet you'll find that intentionally thinking about these areas will uncover some opportunities to grow or improve your business.
What we have learned is that most entrepreneurs aren't confident about their business model.
Yeah.
So we want to build confidence. So our metrics are, what is your confidence in starting your business? So we have a delta of a 60% delta of like 30% confidence starting to 80 to 90% like I'm confident starting my business and I know what to do next. Also knowledge. Yeah. And lastly, support. I feel very supported in starting my business. That metric is amazing because the communities that haven't done this, they get like 12% and they end with like a 70 to 80%. But if you look at high tech growth businesses, they don't really look at the supports because it's kind of like a given. You have your money, you have your investments, you have your VCs, you have your SBA, you have all these resources, but these other businesses don't. Yeah. We have to give them those resources. We have to create an on-ramp for them as well.
Absolutely.
And so I don't think the job metric's going to go away, but I do think we need to change the way we look at jobs.
Yes.
But then also, how do we help entrepreneurs be successful? Because here's the thing. I said this one time at a conference. When we say that only 1 out of 10 businesses succeeds out of 5 years, and that's been the metric for the past 50 years, we're doing something wrong. We need to fix it.
Yes.
Why aren't we fixing the problem?
How do we fix it, Jose? I'm not going to make you answer that.
No, I mean, I do believe that we have a model, right? I do believe, our success rate is there. You know, it's a short pool, right? We're not in every single state. We're in 20-something states. We're in 100 communities. Yep. We've supported over 20,000 entrepreneurs, you know, and again, out of the 70% of them, like, so that's what, 14,000 entrepreneurs that are successful.
Yeah.
Like, our metrics is still better than the national average.
Absolutely.
So why aren't we investing in the fundamental tools that they need? Just because they don't have the fundamental tools doesn't mean they can't be great entrepreneurs. It just means that they need the resources to get there.
Does your organization lobby? Do you go and
No, that's a great question.
Just
So
curious.
not at the current, well, we don't do it like directly, but Victor Wang, who used to be at the Kauffman Foundation,
Yep.
has now started the Right to Start. And so he was one of our partners. So
Okay.
he knows the work that we do, and he's always asking for information and how we can do it. So he's the one doing a lot of that lobbying and trying to really change the way. That's
Yeah.
his mission,
I
right?
would assume that the metrics that you're receiving
Mhm.
across the country are helping
Mm-hmm.
to shape
Yeah.
legislation
Yeah.
or helping to
Yeah.
fight
Yeah.
policy that needs to be fought.
Yeah, because he
That's
wrote a
exciting.
book called The Rainforest,
Okay.
right? And everything that he writes in that book, we're doing.
Yep.
And we have the metrics to show for that success.
Mhm.
And so, and I think it's why now you're getting the grants that you're getting, right? It first starts with policies and government, but I'm going to start, like, I can only imagine in the next 5 years, some private money is going to start going into it, right?
That's the hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that again, I think about the 2 years that we have to work with these communities, and how that's certainly not enough time. But what can we accomplish in 2 years, and what does it look like after that? You talked about how you start with co-starters, but you certainly don't end with it.
Yeah.
There's a long journey ahead of these entrepreneurs that are going to continue with this.
Yeah.
How do those spoke organizations take this 2 years of knowledge and resources? What if we're not able to provide another grant? How can they continue to sustain? And have you seen this in other communities?
Absolutely. So a lot of our communities start with grants.
Yep.
And then they got to figure out the self-sustaining because people need it,
Yep.
right? So one is creating the right value for the programming for the entrepreneurs. So here's the thing. A lot of nonprofit organizations, well, we got to give it to them for free because they can't access it. And I think there's truth, but I also think there's a lie to that. You got to invest in yourself, and it costs money. Like, right, like that's the thing. It's like if we're not having them pay for something, they're not going to value it, but they're not going to value their business, so they're going to cheap their business. No, helping them understand that there's value in investing. Like if you can invest a few dollars into going through a program that's going to make your business successful, then you probably shouldn't start a business. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, like, hey, let's just look at the facts, right? You don't want to, so I always tell entrepreneurs or starters, I'm like, so you're going to go on Google and just research and figure it out on your own. How's that going for you? And they don't have an answer for me. So I think that's number one. So creating the value that there's something here for them. They're creating the foundation of community. Now, community is not just the entrepreneurs, but the private sector, right? So how can the big corporations, like, are there resources that these businesses can provide those big corporations, right? So instead of using Panera Bread for their catering, can they use a local business to do their catering? Is somebody building something, a tool or a widget that's going to help this energy sector, be more compliant? Maybe the energy, this corporation, there's a energy company you guys hear. I see the trucks everywhere. Yeah, like maybe like you have an account or a web design company that can revisit that, or marketing that you outsource, right? Like that's all creating and supporting that, right? So you need that private financial investment, but also like resource, like tools and liquid assets that they have to really support them, right? The mentorship. So it's inviting them to that, making them a part of the community, but also your businesses that are in this area say like, hey, we want you to be a part of this, right? Because when there's buy-in from there, and they can see the success, and they can see their city grow, and they can see that there's spaces to fill, and that people are coming and they're growing, the pie is big. Yeah. Then that's where success really comes. And so I think in the 2 years is inviting everyone to be a part of the ecosystem, including business owners and corporations. And lastly, building a roadmap for an entrepreneur to know how to access the tools from traditional economic development and non-traditional economic development.
I'll tell you, that's a heavy lift. We're working on it.
Yeah. But it takes time, though.
It does.
It takes time, and it is possible. And I think it takes leaders like you and your organization it's not about you. Like, I know you, and you care for the entrepreneur. So you're like, when there is this roadblock in trying to collaborate with organizations, I'm assuming here, just by knowing you, that you would say, step to the side, that's saying, okay, fine, Startup Sioux Falls doesn't need to get credit, but they need help.
Yeah.
But even that doorway will show the other organization, wow, man, like you're really here to help us. How can we really work together? And that's what happens. It's not easy, but that's a success, because an entrepreneur ecosystem is not providing resources to entrepreneurs, is making those resources accessible to the entrepreneurs. And there's a big difference.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Business Minute, a recurring segment powered by the SBA, where we'll share business facts and resources available to entrepreneurs throughout the U.S. Small Business Administration. This is Sadie Sweer, Executive Director of SD CEO East Women's Business Center. Did you know there are roughly 12 million women-owned businesses in 2017, with $388.1 billion in payroll and 10.1 million employees? However, women remain underrepresented in small business ownership, as women-owned firms make up only 20% of all employer firms. Interested in starting a business or already own a business? There are many free resources available. One of those resources is SD CEO. SD CEO is a resource organization focused on empowering women in entrepreneurship across South Dakota by providing entrepreneurs with the resources they need to succeed. Along with free and confidential business consultations, SD CEO offers in-person workshops, online training courses, educational seminars, and networking opportunities. Learn more about SD CEO at bhsu.edu/SDCEO.
Talking about leadership and being in these roles. So I've been in this position for almost 3 years, and I still feel that bit of imposter syndrome. It was intimidating to come into this role because I'm not an entrepreneur, and I realized over time, like, that's not necessarily what the ecosystem needed to survive and thrive. You're a new CEO, and I also, I relate to you so much, where we are able to step out of the way, we empathize, we care about our communities. What have been the biggest challenges and biggest rewards for you in this role and working with ecosystems and, just thinking about your career, and the span of different industry that you've been a part of? Why is this role so special to you?
Oh,
I want to make you cry.
well, so the pandemic was really hard for us. So there was a podcast I was listening to, and the person that they had said, if you believe in something, you gotta go all in. You can't be one foot in, 1 foot out. Even if it's hard, you got to be all in, because you have a vision for it. Even if it dies, just go all in. If you don't care anymore, if you don't have a passion, then let it die. If you don't have a vision for it, let it die. And I remember I pulled over and I was like, I have a vision for Co.STARTERS. My audacious vision is that we're the starting place for every creative entrepreneur working with our partners. And I went to Enoch, our founder, and he was also like, man, this is rough. This is hard with the pandemic going on, because funding was scarce. And he said, Jose, I think you're ready to take over. And that was not the conversation I was expecting, right? But what he said to me is like, in trying to find the person that had that same vision as I did, that they would walk with people and move mountains to make it accessible. And so, this work is important to me. And what I had to realize, because I was scared, right? I'm like, well, I've never been a CEO before. I've always been the supporter. I've never been the one who to carry out the vision. And I've had to multiple reading books and podcasts and, looking in, just had to realize that I don't need to prove to people that I'm good. And I don't need to prove to people that what we do is good. I just need to do good work, and I need to do it the way that I know how to do it. And the ones that are judging me and or don't judge me, like, I can't care about that, because at the end of the day, there are lives at stake. Like, our mission is to help people thrive. Individuals and communities thrive through entrepreneurship. That word thrive is important, and we're doing it. And so for me, you know, I have a very strong faith in Christianity, and to me, it's like, I don't need to preach that gospel to help people. I'm doing the work that I believe helps a city, that in turn helps people, that in turn helps a nation, that then, in my belief, helps the kingdom of God. Like, that is in reality, the gospel to me, right? Now, I'm not trying to, you know, again, preach that. I want to be safe for everybody, but that's what love means. And so for me, that's why I'm passionate, because I love these people. Like, I don't know them all, but when I hear stories, or I'm putting my collage together and looking at different people and how people in places create culture, that, I mean, that's a beautiful thing. And so and the last thing I'll say is, I bring in really smart people. Rebecca Marr, who builds our programs, she's smart. And where I argue with her is more on the relational side. But when it comes to program and simplicity, just because I don't like it doesn't mean I'm right. I have to trust that she knows what she's doing.
Yep. Trust.
Right? And so, and with that, you said it, right? It's not about me, it's about the team. Right? So different voices, different people speaking. Our trainings is not just me coming to speak. We have a trainer who's in a different community who's running Co-Starters to do our trainings, so you can hear a different voice. And that's what about Co-Starters, right? It's built by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, right? So
yeah, I love that. This conversation has really filled my cup, I have to say. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I want to leave us with just any words of advice that you have, and also, what can the Sioux Falls community do to continue to bolster economic entrepreneurial activity? It almost feels like we're still striving to let people know the value behind why a thriving entrepreneurial ecosystem is important to a city. So what kind of words do you have for the people of Sioux Falls, and obviously anybody listening who's trying to build an ecosystem in their community? Why is this important?
I think I understand your question. So I'll answer it. It's in this way. We have to change our mindset. Change is hard, especially for traditional economic development. And I want to be very clear. Co-Starters is not against traditional economic development. Actually, we need traditional economic development. All we're saying is, hey, there's a new challenge, and we need to address that challenge. However, I think there's two things that come to mind that I'm trying to say, like, okay, I want to make sure that I'm consistent, right? And so there's two things that I always say. One is, stop trying to be like everybody else, because you'll never be Silicon Valley, you'll never be Austin, you'll never be St. Louis, you'll never be Boston. You are you. You're Sioux Falls. Don't be Chattanooga. Like, be Sioux Falls. What is Sioux Falls? What is Sioux Falls energy? Find it. Have focus groups. Meet with your stakeholders. And who is Sioux Falls? I just did this with Baton Rouge, and it was shocking that they weren't in alignment. Let's create that alignment, because once we have alignment, everything else flows from there. The second thing is, you don't only have to do one thing, because guess what? It's not one party who's in charge of it. It's your community, right? The farmers market doesn't happen because the economic developer director said, you know, we're going to need more community to build a farmers market. No, it was the community saying we need a farmers market. And it was the artist saying, I want to be a part of that. But the economic developer needs to be talking to different businesses and investments that are going to come into the city, that are going to fund and create energy for that. But then you need organizations like NGOs and incubators and accelerators and co-working spaces that nurture that different stage of the entrepreneur. You need the SBA and the colleges to really give funding and access to education or certificates so people can do different things. And so you can do multiple things, but you have to have an overarching message, right? And so Chattanooga, I mean, you know, a lot of people say it's the gig. No, it's that you have an idea, come start with us. That's their culture. That's their thing. I can tell you that, like, I was in Chattanooga, I had like a million ideas a day. It was because it was that energy, right? But also the traditional economic development didn't get in the way. They said, great, how can we help? But also that startup community, they didn't get in the way of economic development saying, hey, we have the answer, you are this. And no, it's like, hey, we disagree, but how can we work together? What do we have in common? Yeah. Let's work on that. Because you can move a lot faster if you find what you have in common instead of fighting what you disagree on.
You're making me think a lot about the Arc of Dreams, which is a new statue that has been erected in the middle of our beautiful downtown over the Big Sioux River. I don't know if you've seen it or heard about it, but it's, two sides of an arc and there's a gap in the middle, and that's that gap where so many of our business leaders and entrepreneurs have taken that leap of faith. Yeah. And I truly believe that's starting to become the drum that we're beating as a city. So gives me goosebumps.
I love it, right? Like that alone. Like you're making a statement, right? You're making a statement. And so I want to say the last thing. Like if I look at Sioux Falls, people are ready, right? So what you're doing is saying, I hear you, and we're going to make you a part of it. Yeah. And what I also know is that your other stakeholders are like, hey, I don't really understand, but I want to be a part of it too. Just let us. And like that is when you see a city thrive. Like cities like Austin, that's what they did. Yeah. Right? They said, oh, okay, we want a culture of food. Okay, we're not going to get in the way, and we're going to just allow food trucks just to go anywhere. They didn't create policies to limit them, where a lot of other cities do. Why? Well, because the restaurateurs are afraid that they're going to take their business. No, stop thinking like that. If you have more food trucks, more foot traffic to your restaurant as well. And so we got to just think differently and stop thinking about competition, but start thinking about collaboration.
Thank you so much, Jose.
No, thank you.
If you're not inspired at this point, I don't know that we can help you. But join us again. This has been a really inspiring conversation, and we hope to continue to collaborate with you in the future. So thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your passion.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for Start Dakota. Visit our website at startupsiouxfalls.com to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend to rate our show on iTunes. If you are a founder and aspiring entrepreneur, you can get started by visiting our website at startupsiouxfalls.com/start. Start Dakota is made possible by funding from the U.S. Small Business Administration. With this funding, Startup Sioux Falls is piloting an expanded version of its CO.STARTERS Business Accelerator program and providing additional resources to support underserved founders. Start with Startup Sioux Falls.